permits a public body to hold a meeting via telephone or other electronic means due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For members of the public, the meeting is being live streamed on the City of Wyoming's YouTube page. The Wyoming City Council meeting will be recorded as part of the public record. After each agenda item is read and the staff gives a report on the agenda item, I will call upon each council member individually if they have questions on that particular item. If you wish to make a motion or second a motion, please state your name first. All votes on all items will be completed by a roll call to meet the state standard for statute 13D.021. All right, and we will, next is Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll actually have Member Onstad lead us in that, please. And for everybody else, please mute your mics.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Member Onstad. Open forum, Mr. Linwood, do we have anybody for open forum tonight?
Mayor, we do not have anyone tonight.
All right, so we'll move on to our agenda, approval of minutes, which is number 1. Consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for November 19th, 2020. If there are no questions or changes, do we have a motion to approve?
Member Lugar, so moved.
Member Lugar makes the first. Do we have a second?
Member Onstad, second.
Member Onstad makes the second, and I will call roll. Member Yeager.
Aye.
Member Onstad.
Aye.
Member Lugar.
Aye.
And Mayor Iverson is an aye. It does pass. Onto the consent agenda, number 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, sorry. Consent agenda number 2 and 3. Does anybody wish to pull an item for further discussion? Seeing nobody has any items to pull, I do need a motion to approve.
Member
Onstad will make.
All right, Member Lugar will make that first. Member Onstad, you gonna make that second?
I will make the second.
Awesome. Roll call, please. Member Yeager.
Aye.
Member Onstad.
Aye.
Member Lugar.
Aye.
And Mayor Iverson is an aye. It does pass. On to acknowledgement of reports from officers, boards, commissions, and department heads. That's number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on our agenda. Does anybody wish to pull a report for further discussion? Seeing that nobody wishes to pull a report, we'll move on to communications, which is number 9 on our agenda. Wyoming COVID-19 Business Preparedness Plan Update. Ms. Dumas.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The city has continuously worked to look to and review guidance from the state of Minnesota, the Center for Disease Control, and Minnesota Public Health as we continue to assess the COVID-19 situation, and as scientific updates help us to learn more about the virus and how it operates and how we can best do the work of the city, do our city operations while also ensuring that staff and the public are safe as safe as possible. One of the questions that we are looking to answer as we continue to navigate our way through this pandemic is, at what point do we return to in-person meetings for the city council and the boards and commissions? So in reviewing some other guidance from different cities around Minnesota, one of the plans that different cities have taken on that really fits into the city of Wyoming's current approach, which has been to really defer to some of that state guidance, is to resume meetings upon the completion of the peacetime emergency order through the state. So that is a proposed amendment that the city is looking to update into the emergency preparedness plan. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm actually gonna lead this off. I think everything looks pretty good. The only thing that I am concerned about is number 17 on that page, which reads, virtual public meetings will continue until the state of Minnesota peacetime emergency declaration expires. I actually would like that taken out. I think that right now it's been that way for a year. We don't know how much longer that's going to be or what that determines that. So I'm going to ask if we have other suggestions on that, but I would prefer that not to be in there and maybe have some other discussions of what those triggers might be. So with that, I am actually going to go to Member Luker to see if she has any questions, comments, or ideas.
I do have a question about testing of staff, and I might have just not caught this, but I'm just wondering if there will be any, like what on-site testing would be happening, if any.
We do not do any COVID testing. However, we do have thermometers that are in city offices, so staff can take their temperature upon arrival at work to help monitor and prevent people who have a fever, which is a common COVID symptom from being in the workplace.
Okay. I guess the only other thing that I wanted to wonder if we wanted to have a conversation about then is what criteria we would use rather than the Minnesota Peacetime Emergency Declaration. And if we have any ideas on that.
One of the things I've thought about as we were, as I was reading this is maybe the Minnesota Department of Health, following that along. I think that the staff does a really good job in watching that and keeping us informed on that. So that would be my only suggestion on that. And I'm willing for anybody else's suggestions. So Member Luker, do you want me to go on to another council member and see what discussion comes out of that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's go to Member Yeager.
Okay, I did have another idea. So I was reading through the revisor or the state statutes today, and apparently there is a proposed statute legislating face masks. And at the end of the statute, they talk about expiration date, with the expiration being when the CDC gives guidance that face masks can be removed. And I wonder if instead of state of Minnesota, if there's an issue with state of Minnesota peacetime emergency, we mirror the proposed legislation to CDC guidance.
All right, is there anything else you'd like to suggest or any other questions?
That was the only question I had, because that had just come up. To an expiration date for the Zoom meetings, that might not be a bad thing. I don't know, you may not want to word it as the peacetime emergency, but maybe we need an expiration date worded as something.
All right, thank you. Member Onstad.
I've been going through some training with the League of Minnesota Cities. And from what I understand, we have 60 days after which we are no longer able to do Zoom meetings as such. I could be wrong on that. I'm still in the classes. But I would like to take into consideration the size of our facility. We're not like some other cities that have huge meeting halls. We have a very small meeting hall. And I think that we have people that are smart enough to know when it's going to be safe for us. And I think that when, we may have some limitations on when we can stop, but I think we need to make sure that we're taking our advice from our employees.
All right. Anything else with that document that you're concerned about?
No.
Okay. I don't know if we're any closer with that. I'm wondering if we don't have to pass this tonight, correct?
Correct. And staff can kind of go back and see what other guidance other cities are looking at. We can just continue to evaluate this from an administrative perspective. This was just a proposal kind of coming out of some other communities that staff wanted to present to the city council.
Perfect. Okay, I'm comfortable with maybe taking this back and giving us maybe some other guidelines, what we could go after. I know like Stacy City Hall is super small, smaller than ours. So maybe we kind of look at what they have going on and as well. But I think I would feel better if we could not vote on this tonight and then have some other recommendations. If council, does that seem, I'll just call roll call because Mr. Linwood, are we able to see everybody on the screen now? Did we take care of that?
Yes, we did.
Yep.
Nice. Okay. So I don't know if council knew that, but before you could only see one person, the person talking, and we couldn't see everybody else. So when I'm asking for people to shake their head, our residents know what I was talking about. So with that, just a quick shake of heads. Is everybody fine with just getting it back to staff and taking a look at it? Okay, awesome. That sounds great. Thank you for that. And I appreciate all the time too, Ms. Dumas, on it. So I know it's not easy following all that. So thank you. All right, on to new business, which is number 10 on our agenda, to consider approving the Wyoming Pay Equity Report prepared by Baker Tilly Incorporated, utilizing the Minnesota Management and Budget web-based pay equity system as required by the state of Minnesota Local Government Pay Equity Act. Mr. Linwood, are we starting with you?
I will start, Mayor. Mayor, members of the council, the item for you tonight is an item that the city is responsible per state statute to do a report every 3 years on our pay equity. The state of Minnesota and local government, it requires all public jurisdictions, so that's cities, counties, and school districts, to try to eliminate any kind of gender-based wage inequality. This has been going on in the state of Minnesota since 1992. We do fall into a component where it is necessary based on our employee amount. It's simply one or more of your organization that it's necessary to do this. Essentially, what pay equity is, it includes that, like I said, issues of fairness for compensation for employees, but it's in base pay and total compensation, including bonuses, overtime, employee benefits, and opportunities for advancement. It doesn't necessarily mean that all employees are paid the same, but it focuses ensuring employees performing comparable work are receiving comparable compensation. And that goes through things like skills, effort, responsibility, education, quality, quantity of production, and sometimes location. Ann Antonsen from Baker Tilly is with us tonight. She completed the City of Wyoming's pay equity study for 2020, and that the city did pass 3 of the 4 tests necessary to achieve compliance. Those are accuracy tests or statistical analysis, salary range tests, and exceptional service pay tests. She has included a letter going through these in greater depth for the city council. The city is currently not in compliance with the statistical analysis test. That means that to pass this test, the city has to have 6 or more male classes, at least 1 class, an established range of 4 or 5 male classes, and an underpayment ratio of under 80. Some of this I can certainly let Ms. Antonsen go to into greater results, but we are not currently passing that component of the test to be in compliance with pay equity. What does that mean? It means that the city will need to work with Baker Tilly and to analyze our pay plan to ensure that we have correct statistical analysis moving forward, that we come compliant. We'll do an evaluation of that pay plan in doing some analysis and looking back at this and speaking with Ms. Antonsen. It doesn't appear that we've updated that pay plan since 2006. And really, this is an opportunity to upgrade or to redo and analyze that pay plan and to see what issues we're having with it, where we do have some deficiencies, it appears, and to make sure that we are compensating all of our employees equally and fairly. I think that's what this organization has been really committed to pay equity in the past, and that we want to strive for equal treatment of our employees. So essentially, we have a system that isn't functioning appropriately right now, and we'll have to take the necessary steps to ensure that we do get it corrected, analyze it and correct it, and come back into compliance. With that, I can stand for any questions.
All right. Mr. Linwood, we've been in compliance every year since, as far as I know, since I've been mayor or on council, correct?
Correct, Mayor. The 2000, as recently as 2000, I believe you came on council in 2014. So 15 and 18, we were in compliance. I believe back in 2005, there might have been an issue that was corrected as well, but we have been in compliance since.
Okay. And my understanding when I go through this, which I think is very complicated, but my understanding is a lot of things can make a change on this particular document. It's easy to fall out of compliance. It's easy to fall into compliance, correct?
Yes, Ms. Antonsen, maybe I'll let you go into some of the deviation and things that can affect this. I think it's more susceptible in smaller organizations like ours, but Ms. Antonsen, do you maybe want to discuss that a little bit?
We can't hear.
Can you hear me now?
We
There it
can, thank you.
Great. Sorry about that. My apologies. Rob is correct in that in a smaller organization, the software program developed by the state of Minnesota for measuring pay equity is a lot more sensitive to changes in staffing, changes to the balance of a class, changes in the wages of individual positions within an organization. So by, for example, changing a classification from a male to female or vice versa can bring the city in or out of compliance with pay equity. Also, by adding a position or deleting a position, it can impact your compliance. It's not always easy to predict what's going to happen just because of the regression analysis that has been developed by the state, but it is sensitive for that. But in running the analysis for the city, where some of the issues are is that the city is not following the pay plan that was developed back in 2006. Now, that's getting a little bit old because usually organizations should look at reviewing, updating their compensation program about every 5 to 7 years, less often if we fall into a regression, more often if there's difficulty recruiting or retaining employees, or if the market is rapidly changing. So some of the issues that we see is if you look at the report and you look at the job evaluation points, so the value of the positions within the organization based on what you have determined to be essential job functions, job responsibilities, and job requirements, those positions are evaluated using a job evaluation system as is required by the state. And you have some positions where looking at their evaluation, and I'm going to use, for example, the positions of maintenance worker, which is a male-dominated position, and the accounting clerk, which is a female-dominated position. In the design of the pay plan that was done in 2006, those positions would have been 2 grades apart. So one would have been in a grade 8, one would have been in a grade 10, I believe. Well, between those two, there should be a 14% spread in the pay ranges for those positions. So 14% spread in between the 2 minimums, and 14% between the 2 maximums. What we have between those two positions is a less than 2% spread. So when you start looking at a regression analysis, which is relating the points of a position with the pay that is available to the position, it says that that accounting clerk then is underpaid in relationship to what the regression analysis says the predicted pay should be. And so that's just one example of what has happened with the pay plan over the years. And it's very typical of many organizations that over time, those pay plans deteriorate. Certain changes are made because of, recruitment issues for you because you have different bargaining units and things can happen between what you settle contracts for and what the non-union employees receive in changes in their compensation levels. And so those are some of the reasons why you see organizations such as yours that are smaller in size that start to have difficulty maintaining that compliance unless you keep that pay plan up to date. And even then, you can still have issues with compliance just because of the reasons that I stated earlier, but it's easier to fix if the pay plan is maintained in its integrity.
Okay, thank you. That makes
No, that's a lot of information.
Well, it actually makes sense because it's really the state in a way is dictating, right? And so we just need to make sure that that plan keeps updated. And as we go on and hire, we don't have this may not sound right, but we don't necessarily have the room to say, you know, we want to do X amount of dollars. We need to make sure that we're within the state guidelines, correct? It kind of in a nutshell, we have to go by what state says, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, you need to, according to state legislation, every public sector employer has to maintain compliance with pay equity. If you do not maintain compliance, you face loss of local government aid and you face fines. So it's in your best interest to maintain a system that will assist you in maintaining that compliance over time.
Okay, and making sure that we have the correct salaries and so we can budget for that as well. So that makes perfect sense. I really appreciate that. I'm going to go around with council members to ask any questions that they might have. We will start with Member Yeager.
No questions.
All right, Member Onstad.
No questions.
Perfect. And Member Luker.
No questions. Mine were answered. Thank you.
All right, so there are no further questions. So what we will need is a motion to approve the Wyoming Pay Equity Report prepared by Baker Tilly Incorporated, utilizing the Minnesota Management and Budget web-based pay equity system as required by the State of Minnesota Local Government Pay Equity Act. Do we have a motion to approve?
Member Luger, so moved.
Member Luker makes the first. Do we have a second?
Member Onstad will make the second.
Member Onstad makes that second. By roll call, please. Member Yeager.
Aye.
Member Luker.
Aye.
Member Onstad.
Aye.
And Mayor Iverson is an aye. That does pass. We'll move on to number 11 to consider resolution 21-02-11, a resolution approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids for the East Viking Boulevard Utility Improvement City Project number 19-02. Mr. Erickson, you are going to be up on the agenda now for a little while. Are you ready?
I think I am ready. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. We recently had a work session to discuss the East Viking Boulevard utility improvements. And we went through in detail our plan for upsizing that existing sanitary sewer between Fallbrook Avenue and Fenwick Avenue on East Viking. And that increases to accommodate future growth within the community. And that really the project upstream and downstream of that has already occurred. And so this is a gap that we're completing due to the fact that we have a MnDOT project, resurfacing project on that stretch of roadway. So we need to make sure that our work is completed in advance of their work. And so staff was previously directed to prepare plans and specifications. We have completed that. We will continue to work with property owners and businesses and the community at large to really inform them of the project and work on access concerns that they may have. It will be somewhat impactful as we discussed earlier. And so we have completed the plans and specifications, and we're simply seeking authorization to advertise for bids at this time. And so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
All right. I have no questions. We'll start with Council Member Onstad.
I have no questions at this time.
All right. Member Yeager.
No questions at this time.
Member Luger.
No questions.
All right, so then we need a motion to approve resolution 21-02-11, a resolution approving plans and specifications and ordering Advertisements for bids for the East Viking Boulevard Utility Improvement, City Project number 19-02. Do we have a motion to approve?
Member Onsted will make the motion.
Member Onstead makes the first. Do we have a second?
Member Luger will second.
Member Luger makes that second. Roll call, please. Member Yeager.
Aye.
Member Onstead.
Aye.
Member Luger.
Aye.
Mayor Iverson is an aye. It does pass. Number 12 on our agenda, to consider resolution 20-02-12, a resolution receiving the feasibility report and setting the public hearing for the 2021 street improvement project, city project number 21-01. Mr. Erickson.
Thank you once again, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I have a brief PowerPoint that I'd like to share with you. Mr. Linwood, if you would allow me to share my screen, that would be great. Well,
That should be ready to go. Mr. Erickson.
All right, thank you. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yeah.
You're able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Staff was previously directed to prepare a feasibility report for the 2021 street improvement project. And so this evening, we're here to present the findings of that feasibility report. You received the report in its entirety in your council packets, but this is just a summary of that. Again, the project location is identified here on the screen. We have some of our older downtown area here that really does not have any significant drainage features whatsoever. So there is one drainage issue in this location that we'll be correcting. But for the most part, working with Public Works, along with a neighborhood meeting, we found that for the most part, the project overall really does not have significant drainage concerns. And so there will be certainly replacement of culverts as they're aged. There's a couple of minor drainage areas that we do want to correct with the project. But overall, this is the project location that we're looking at. I'll reference this location here because I'll bring this up a little bit later, but keep in mind that we did have a neighborhood meeting and there was a question about potentially adding to the project and completing this segment of Galen, and so, or Glen Oak, I'm sorry, Glen Oak. And so we'll discuss that a little bit later. Just wanted to point that out on the map now. As far as project schedule, again, we're authorized to prepare the feasibility study back in November. Always before we finalize a feasibility study, we like to have that first public informational meeting where we hear from property owners about concerns that they have with the project area and just really make sure that we're including all components that we need to within the feasibility study. This evening, we are at this stage of the schedule. We're receiving the feasibility study and staff will be recommending that we set the public hearing for March 2nd. Before that March 2nd meeting, similarly, we do have another public informational meeting that we like to hold to really share with the residents the results of the feasibility study. And so we're tentatively scheduling that for February 17th at 6 p.m. And we'll work to get that notice out and make sure that we invite council to participate in that meeting as well. With the public hearing occurring on March 2nd, that will be an opportunity for plans to order, or for the council to order plans and specifications, and ultimately moving forward bidding in the time frame that we see here, with probably like a May award of contract. We don't anticipate that we would start construction until August. I referenced the project earlier, the downtown, or I'm sorry, the sanitary sewer project. That will be pretty impactful, and we don't want to have multiple projects occurring at the same time. And so we'll look to schedule this one for August. It certainly allows plenty of time for that project to be completed. We started our project last year in August, if you recall, and that was a much larger and more complex project than we have here. And so we're not starting too late, but we are getting out ahead and getting some bids out a little bit earlier and hopefully receive some good bid prices on that. Final completion would be in October, with the assessment hearing taking place in November of 2021. So a little bit more background. The City Council authorized the preparation of the report in November. The streets in the project area were generally constructed in the 70s and 80s, really deficient in today's standards. And so we're looking to upgrade these roadways, and we can do so with a pretty inexpensive fix on a lot of these roadways. And so we'll get into a little bit more detail on that. But really the surface and subsurface deterioration, we're looking at more maintenance than, I'm sorry, due to surface and subsurface deterioration, we're looking at more of a reconditioning or a reclamation type improvement project. And drainage issues have been identified in as an ongoing concern in limited areas. So we've just flashed a few photos here. I think we're all familiar with the condition of the roadway. A lot of those have been covered with chip seals and really makes the appearance look much better than they are, but the roadway condition throughout is quite poor. The proposed improvements, we are looking at complete bituminous pavement replacement, and what we'll do is we'll have a reclamation machine come in, they'll grind up the existing asphalt and mix that with the underlying aggregate. So essentially what we're doing is we're thickening that base that our pavement will sit on, and then we'll pave over that with our standard 4 inches of bituminous pavement. And so somewhat in a lot of areas, we'll be raising the roadway approximately 4 inches. In areas that we cannot do that, we'll be removing the material and subcutting that material to get it to remain at the same elevation. And instances where we can't do that is where driveways would then have backfall in towards garages and things of that nature. And so it is relatively a simple project in comparison to last year's street reconstruction project. We're not proposing concrete curb and gutter throughout like we did on that project. However, there will be some proposed concrete curb and gutter in areas that we've noted drainage issues or erosion issues along the side of the roadway where there's not a ditch. And street roads grades will be proposed to match very similar grades than what exists there today. Again, minor modifications to accommodate some drainage concerns. There are areas that there are not ditches. However, in speaking with public works staff, speaking with residents, these areas have not identified as problematic areas. The material within the boulevard areas is quite sandy and infiltrates. And so we're not looking at wholesale construction of ditches and impacts to properties. Most of these ditches have been filled in over years by property owners, potentially additional sand and sediment from the roadway. But a lot of these ditches were insufficient in the first place and have been filled in, but they are functioning. And so we're not looking at wholesale ditch grading throughout the entire project areas, but we are looking at it in some minor areas to improve where we can. Again, this is just talking a little bit more about these drainage improvements. We're going to maximize the existing facilities that are present. We're going to expand some of the drainage swales and ditches. We're looking at replacing deficient storm sewer structures and culverts within the right-of-way, adding some minor storm sewer, in particular that downtown area of 267th and 266th. And as I mentioned, some small installation of curb in isolated areas. There are some water main improvements. Those water main improvements consist of hydrant replacements. Some of these are quite aged. Some of them have trees growing around them. If you have driven out, one is pretty entertaining to see. We do have some new gate valves that need to be installed where they should be installed, but they have not, they're just currently not there. And so we've identified some areas that will help our overall system. We've televised the sanitary sewer throughout the project area. We've identified some spot repairs that will be required, but relatively minor needs on that front. And then we, of course, will look at reducing inflow and infiltration as we do with all of our projects. Again, the proposed improvements for the most part, just a kind of a sample typical section. Some areas you do have ditches. We're just simply going to grind up again that asphalt with the underlying aggregate and pave our 2 feet or two 2-inch lifts of asphalt over that. And so really not very impactful to the adjacent areas to the roadway. We'll be blending in and matching driveways to make sure that those all fit with the new road elevation. And again, for the most part, all the roadways will remain at their existing width. There is some widening and some narrowing. We're going to try to make sure that they're consistent, but for the most part, most of the roadways will remain very similar in width to what they exist today. I think we're all familiar with our project funding, but 20% is assessed for surface and drainage improvements only. I referenced we do have some sanitary sewer and water improvements. Those are non-assessable. We do, again, are assessing 20% per our assessment policy. The assessment is based on unit rather than front footage, and assessable units are based on the number of buildable lots based on the current zoning. We do not have any units that have the ability to subdivide and build multiple units, so that is pretty clear. There are a few unique circumstances to this project with assessments similar to past years, and I'll go over those just very briefly. With the city paying the remaining portion of that project. So the 80% would be borne by the city plus the sewer and water costs. As far as the assessments, these are the assessable parcels. All parcels that are adjacent to these improvements are evaluated. I'll highlight just a few examples. You can see a parcel here you would think would be assessed with this project, right? It's not a corner lot, it's within. Their driveway actually accesses out to Wyoming Trail. And so they don't have an access out to Forley. There's a wetland in this location, and so they will not be assessed with this project per our assessment policy. Again, our assessment policy identifies parcels taking access from the roadway, or their only access would be required to come from one of the roadways. And so an example of that is parcel number 71. It has frontage on none of the roadways, but their driveway does come out to Foxborough in this location. And so just wanted to quick highlight that there's a few unique circumstances. There's a parcel here, number 31, that does not have frontage, but their only access is out to one of our public roadways that is being reconstructed. And so staff has spent quite a bit of time going through and evaluating each and every parcel. One other example of note to note here is this parcel here is non-buildable. The only access for parcel 120 is across this lot that they also own and out to Glen Oak. And so they would be receiving one unit assessment, but the parcel here will not. And so I just wanted to highlight again, just some examples so that we're all aware of the policy. One last one that I'll give an example is a corner lot here that does have frontage on it on Glen Oak, but their driveway accesses off of this roadway. And so they'll be assessed when this roadway here is reconstructed. So when we look at the total assessable surface improvements with the drainage, we have about $1.79 million. We take 20% of that, we end up with an assessed amount of $358,000. We divide that by the total number of accessible units, 121.5, and we end up with an assessment rate of just under $3,000. I want to just quick highlight, I mentioned earlier that we had a request to include the remaining portion of Glen Oak Drive. And with that, I wanted to just highlight that Glen Oak Drive on that southern segment is a newer section of roadway with concrete curb and gutter. And so some of the residents along the stretch are asked why we wouldn't just continue on the remaining 800 feet of Glen Oak. And so one, that was not included in our capital improvements planning project. I did indicate that we would discuss that at this meeting. Really, the type of improvement on that segment would be different than the type of project that we're doing. So it would be even less invasive than what we're doing here. So this is a complete reclamation where we grind up the full pavement structure. This segment would be a little bit different. We'd actually come in with a milling machine and take off the top layer of asphalt, leaving the second layer of asphalt. And we would then just repair that. We typically, when we do that, we also look at sanitary sewer televising to make sure that there aren't sanitary sewer repairs. Of course, our sanitary sewer televising was already completed. We did not include that with this project. We were directed to complete a feasibility study per the direction of the streets identified here. And so that's not to say that this could not be looked at and added to a project. But again, I think financially, we did not have that as part of our financial review when developing the capital improvements plan. Those property owners were not included with the neighborhood meeting initially to start this project. And then I guess lastly, and Mr. Linwood could speak to the financial component if he would, but lastly, the other component to this really is that it is a different type of improvement, and we do have a large mill and overlay project at some stage in the future to complete within the Thornbeck neighborhood, this area, a number of areas where we see these shallow potholes forming from what we suspect is issues with our chip sealing process. And so I just wanted to quick highlight that that was a comment from the public, and we can discuss that at the conclusion of the PowerPoint, but I just wanted to highlight that. And Rob, did you have any commentary on the financial portion of that?
Before
Hey,
we
Mark.
do that, Mr. Erickson, is there any way you could push the screen up just a little bit so I can see how long? I just want to see the bottom of the portion of Glen Oak. Does that make sense? Like it's,
It makes complete sense, and I will do this here because I that was the PowerPoint,
Okay.
and it was a fixed figure, and so it's really this section that you see here. It
Yep.
does affect about 13 property owners that were not included in the first notice regarding the project. So it would this parcel here does have access out, and so it's I think there's 7 on this side and 6 on this side that would be affected.
Okay, thank you.
And I think Mr. Erickson did a nice job going through that and the differentiation and the type of project we're looking at from the two, that I think it was important that's how when we evaluated and put these together in our CIP plan, why we broke them out the way we did. The other component that he had stated, we haven't through our assessment process or state statute assessment process. And then at this point in time, what we've allocated for potential funds towards this project in our CIP is mainly that the city will be utilizing street funds and allocating dollars that we have on hand and not bonding for this project. Moving forward, those future projects, it'll be necessary for the council and staff to continue those discussions in regards to a financing mechanism for projects moving forward. So that extra cost really wasn't included or planned for in our 21 budget. It was mainly based off that project that WSB had been already brought forward.
All right, thank you. I don't really have a lot of questions. I think after Mr. Linwood, you kind of answered my question in terms of how much will it cost and what does that look like in our CIP. Mr. Erickson, how has the residents been attending the open house? I wasn't able to make the first one, so curious as to how that went.
Yeah, I think overall, I think the property owners were supportive of the project. I did not hear a lot of negative commentary. There were some questions about the project. There was some feedback about drainage and things of that nature that they would like to see addressed. But I think overall, people were appreciative of the roadways being, I guess, looked at to be improved. We heard a lot of positive feedback that, yeah, it definitely needs to be done. I think there's always questions very early on at what are the results of what is the impact to them? What is the cost going to be? And so I just share with them that, that'll be at a subsequent meeting that we'll be able to share that, but this is more of a informative process to make sure people are aware of the public improvement process and what to expect from the process. And so they were shared information as much as we could. Of course, the cost is the biggest factor that they want to hear. And so we'll have that at that February 17th neighborhood meeting.
Okay, and I do want to point out February 17th is Ash Wednesday. So okay. I just wanted to I think we might need to either adjust the time or the date. So whatever you guys
flexible on that. So I appreciate you sharing that. We typically do these on Wednesdays, but a Thursday would work just as well. And I'll work with Mr. Linwood to make sure we find a time that that works best for all. And again, we'll likely be doing this via Zoom. It's certainly, we miss having in-person meetings as well. And I think property owners like that as well. But we've had pretty good success with the public joining via Zoom. And we'll likely be doing that again in this case.
Okay, that's great. I just think with Ash Wednesday, a lot of churches are doing drive-throughs for Ash Wednesday, so that 6 o'clock time might be kind of difficult for that. So awesome. So those are my only questions. I think what I'll do is I'll open it up to council. So Councilmember Onstead, questions or comments?
I have no questions or comments at this time.
All right, thank you. Member Yeager.
When you talk about the reclamation process and you talked about thickening the roadway and raising the roadway.
Yes.
When are you going to do that? Because I thought the machine just goes through, picks up all the asphalt, grinds it up, and then lays it down as it's coming by?
So that is there is a process that's not this type of project. So this project will simply be grinding up the aggregate or grinding up the asphalt with the underlying aggregate, and that will be our new Class 5 section. So this isn't the process where we inject the oil immediately into that mixture and create the asphalt from that. This will be a process where we increase the aggregate base underneath, and we use that with a blended Class 5 and the asphalt, roughly a 50-50 mix. And then we pave over that. And so we essentially strengthen the roadway with that additional base, and then we pave over that.
Okay, and then this will work just as well as a reconstruction.
Yeah, I think, we have certainly phenomenal soils in this project area. We've taken soil borings, and there's the geotechnical report was very favorable in comparison to what we had on the west side of the freeway. And so that really goes into part of our decision making. We've looked at and evaluated these areas as we develop our capital improvements plan. Although we don't always go through and do soil borings in advance, we have general knowledge of the soils, whether it's projects nearby or water main breaks that we have knowledge of the area or things of that nature. And so we look at that, and certainly we were correct in this case when we determined this was the appropriate fix for this. We wouldn't necessarily recommend this if we had ditches that weren't functioning, that were holding water continually, and we had very poor subgrades. We'd be looking at a different type of fix, but we're very confident that this will certainly build a long-lasting roadway.
Cool. And then for our funding for it, I take it this is going to come out of the street improvement fund, and how much is in there?
Correct, Councilmember Yeager. This would come out of our street improvement fund. I would have to look and to see what the exact balance is in that right now, but I think it's approximately 2.3 million, I think, in that fund right now, approximate. I'll double check that and I get a number to council tomorrow on that, but
Okay.
It would all come from our street improvement fund.
Okay, that's all I had.
All right, and Member Luker.
I have no questions.
All right, awesome. We'll do a motion on this. I just want to say for the residents that'll be watching this, 2015, is that the first road project we did in a long time for the city? Mr. Linwood, can you, or Mr. Erickson, was it 2015?
Correct.
2014.
First residential, correct.
Okay, and just for the residents, we all heard, we know our roads are needing care, and we're working diligently to find ways to get the inner cities, if you will, the neighborhood roads worked on. So any questions, you can always let us know, but it's amazing on how expensive a road is to do. And I think that when you hear some of these numbers, we can see why it does take a little while to get them done. So that's just for residents to kind of check it out and let us know if there's any questions. So with that, we are going to need a motion to approve resolution 20-02-12, a resolution receiving the feasibility report and setting the public hearing for the 2021 street improvement project, city project number 21-01. I'm going to make that first motion. So Mayor Iverson makes the first. Do we have a second?
Member Luger will second.
Member Luger makes the second. Roll call, please. Member Onstad?
Aye.
Member Yeager?
Aye.
Member Luger?
Aye.
And Mayor Iverson is an aye. It does pass. Number 13 on our agenda, to consider resolution 21-01-13, a resolution approving the purchase of one Ford Explorer SUV hybrid utility pursuit vehicle and build out for the Wyoming Police Department in the amount of $43,197. Chief Hoppy, I believe you're taking this one.
I am, Madam Mayor, and thank you. City Council members, we are seeking approval to replace one of our public safety vehicles. And for the benefit of our new council member and those following along online, is public safety has a global fleet management strategy, and this falls within that. And that strategy is really designed to maximize the use of the vehicle to keep it under that, that 6-year and 100,000 mile warranty. And part of that is we identify some of our vehicles as primary and secondary usages, and this vehicle falls within that category. We're looking to replace our 2014 Fire Command vehicle, which is an SUV that's right near the 100,000 mile mark and will be over that once we do take possession of a new one, and beyond the 6 years that we've allocated for our useful life. The vehicle is currently out of warranty because we've exceeded the 6 years, but fastly approaching that 100,000 mile mark. And so we're looking to replace that vehicle. But rather than purchasing a brand new vehicle in the fire service for command vehicle, which we would never utilize the extended warranty on because they put far less miles on it over on an annual basis than the police department does, we have identified some of our vehicles in the police side that when they hit the 50,000 mile mark, we transition them over to the fire because we burn up 50,000 miles in the police department at twice the rate or twice as quickly as the fire service does. And by doing this strategy, we really keep the vehicle under warranty for most of its useful life, which keeps our repairs and maintenance costs down. So we would be looking at moving one of our F-150 pickup trucks out of the police service and moving it over for a fire command vehicle, which has something that they have identified as a better service vehicle for that type of service use than the SUV.
Paul, we can't hear you. All right, is everybody seeing what I'm seeing? Is that Paul's not? Okay, I wasn't sure if it was my line or not. All right.
All right, I'm gonna just keep my video off. It might help with the internet streaming here. So we're looking at moving that F-150 down to fire service and then replacing the F-150 in the police department with a new 2021 Ford SUV, which is kind of our standard service vehicle for patrol use. Last year, Ford came out with the hybrid version of the police pursuit vehicle, which is what we're looking at using this year or replacing this year. But it's a $3,319 upgrade for that power plant. Diving into Ford's manufactured testing and information that they have on the vehicle, we would be looking at saving nearly $7,750 over the 100,000 miles that we would use that vehicle. About half of it coming from just fuel savings based on miles per gallon that we drive, but the other half, that fuel savings coming from when the cars are under idle. It utilizes the electric motor and battery rather than the gas engine, to keep the vehicle in what we call office operating mode with all the technology. And that's where a lot of the real cost savings comes from, the fuel consumption. And so we would be looking at replacing that, but not only fitting it within our current green initiatives that the city has for looking for reducing, our carbon footprint, but we'd also be looking at this as a first hybrid in the police department and evaluating for possible identifying it for all future squads going forward. If it performs as indicated by Ford and their testing, I see this as probably our next generation police car is the hybrid version rather than just purely the fuel consumption model of it. The total cost to build that squad car is going to be, with the purchase, the build out, and the graphics and whatnot, will be $43,197, which fits within the $47,000 that we actually budgeted in 2021 for replacement. So I'll stand for any questions.
All right, Mr. Councilmember Onstad, I'm gonna go for you first with any questions.
Yeah, I have a question about the warranty with a hybrid system like that. How are they with covering, say, the battery, the electrical powertrain with the extended warranty? I'd like to know that that is fully covered as opposed to just a regular the gas powered drivetrain. I had a friend that had problems with a hybrid car, and parts were not covered, even though they had the extended warranty. And I'd just like to make sure that we're addressing that before we go into purchasing.
Right. So part of our strategy is to purchase that 6-year, 100,000 mile.
Chief Hoppy, we can't hear you.
Car. Ford actually has extended that warranty to 8 years and 100,000 miles on the electric motor and the battery. So that is included in this premium extended warranty. So we do buy the premium extended warranty, which gives us more coverage on the squads. And almost every one of our squads that we've had in service, up to that 100,000 mile mark, we've utilized everything that we've spent on those warranties and then some. So they have proven to be very beneficial as a fleet management strategy is purchasing the warranty. So that's always worked well for us. But yes, this warranty does cover 8 years, 100,000 miles on the electric and the battery component of this car. But the rest of the car is under the 6-year, 100,000 mile warranty.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Member Yeager.
Do you have to plug this one in?
No, it's a combination. So it has a standard combustible engine, and it's married to the hybrid component. So as the vehicle drives and brakes, it actually charges the battery system in the car. So the vehicle is designed like under idle, the engine will shut off, similar to when your car comes to the stop sign, stops on those hybrids. But when the car is parked, it'll actually shut off the combustible engine. It'll run on the battery, and then when the computer recognizes that the battery's getting low, it'll start the engine in order to recharge the battery of the car. And so the gas component actually charges the battery. It's not a full electric vehicle that would otherwise require us to plug in.
Oh, no, I was just curious if the electric motor on this being bigger than your normal battery, if the battery was sufficient to charge as the car is running. But your park and idle sounds like something I have in my car too.
Yeah, it's we're kind of excited to see how this really works because our squads do sit on idle when they're running, just mainly because of all the electronics that run in them, the computers, their mobile offices and the oxygen and medical supplies. So with a large battery capable of running an electric motor, it actually allows us to stop or shut the engine component off and use less fuel because we can operate.
All right, Chief Hoppy, you went quiet again.
But I got the rest of it.
Okay. Chief Hoppy, can you hear us? All right, well, this is.
I think we can hear you again, Chief Hoppy.
Yep, I'm back.
Okay, good deal. All right, let's go to Member Luker.
I have no questions.
All right, and I have one question because I have ridden in the car, police car, and I know that you have to all of a sudden step on the gas and just go really fast. And I equate that to a cartoon where I feel like I'm back against the seat. So my question is this, will this get to speed as quickly as our other squad cars?
So the specification and specifics from the manufacturer actually indicates it'll do it much faster because you're utilizing both technology. The combustible engine married to the hybrid electrical engine will actually produce more horsepower, more torque, and a quicker response. So we'll actually have, believe it or not, a faster car because of how it's manufactured.
That's awesome. I think that's great that we will have that advantage then. So perfect. If there aren't any further questions, we do need a motion to approve Resolution 21-02-13, a resolution approving the purchase of one Ford Explorer SUV hybrid utility pursuit vehicle and build out for the Wyoming Police Department in the amount of $43,197. Do we have a motion to approve?
Member Onstead would like the motion.
Member Onstead makes that first. Do we have a second?
Member Luger will second.
Member Luger makes the second. Roll call, please. Member Yeager.
Aye.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Aye.
Aye. Member Onstead?
Aye.
Member Luger?
Aye.
And Mayor Iverson is an aye, so that is 4-0 in case it was hard to hear. Number 14 on our agenda to consider resolution 21-02-14, a resolution to authorize the purchase of a server from CW Technology in the amount of $27,681. Mr. Linwood, you'll be discussing this with us?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Mayor, members of council, this item is a item that is replaced essentially every 5 years. This is our city server, and this is a server that is at its end of useful life and it has aging components. This is our core networking server that handles all of our traffic at City Hall, including some of the backups that we work between both at the Wyoming Police Department and at the city. It has been a budgeted item, but as part of its replacement, there are some things that we've taken into consideration. The physical server age, our normal protocol is to replace this around 5 years because after that parts start to fail and it could disrupt our business service. The current server hardware was last purchased in December of 2015. We're also adding additional storage and drives onto this new server. This will allow us to maintain operations as we continue to go more paperless. We do have a larger need for storage along with the implementation of our BSNA software. Operating systems are both running Server 2012. Microsoft will be ending service on that in 2023 from this existing server. That updates and keeps things secure, protects us from malware. It's also will provide improved performance as this server becomes, like, once again, the end of its useful life. Our email server is also contained in this. We're also running on that Exchange 2013. End of service support on that will be in April of 2023. We have to upgrade this system before the end of the date on that. So at this time, we'll be doing that as well. And then the other component that we've really analyzed on this is utilizing the new BSNA software that we'll be using for a lot of our different requirements here in the city, including our point of sale, utility billing, building department, human resources, financials. Really was a main component that we wanted to look at when building out this server and make sure that the system requirements in this server met those specifications. We budgeted $28,000 for this server in our 2021 capital budget, and the server price came in at $27,681. With that, I can stand for any questions.
All right, I do not have any questions. Let's go to Member Yeager.
What's the backup like in case, if we're going more paperless and we're relying more on computers and storage, what's the backup like in case something crashes?
Sure. So the city, we do have a disaster recovery plan. Currently, what we have is we have a couple of redundant systems. So currently, both the city server and the police server, they do a backup of each other at each location. So that happens every night. And then we have a second redundancy, which is a cloud. So those servers are backed up into a cloud to ensure that if we had a total loss of both buildings, that we would have be able to retain all of that data and be able to get back up and running if we had some sort of critical incident, whether it be a fire or natural disaster, things like that. So we do have some pretty good protocols in place for that to ensure that if we did have something go wrong, that we'd be able to restore that data.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Member Onstead.
No questions, but I would hope that it would help with our Zoom meetings that freeze up every once in a while.
I don't know, is that from the server or is it just our internet or what's going on? I agree. So
it sounds like Midco's been having some issues today, so I'm going to attribute it to that. I don't believe it's the server. So, but hopefully it'll all help.
right. All right. Member Luger.
I have no questions on this. I'm glad to see the increased security and upgrades.
Agreed. Awesome. All right. So we need a motion to approve Resolution 21-02-14, a resolution to authorize the purchase of a server from CW Technology in the amount of $27,681. Do we have a motion to approve?
Luger, so moved.
Member Luger makes the first. Do we have a second? Mayor Iverson will make that second. And we'll do roll call on that, please. Member Onstad,
Aye.
Member Yeager,
Aye.
Member Luger,
Aye.
and Mayor Iverson is an aye, so it does pass. All right, we're gonna move on to council reports. Let's start with Member Yeager.
No report, and thank you all for watching.
All right, Member Onstad.
I've been attending the leadership, I want to call it the Leadership Academy. It's with the League of Minnesota Cities, and I am learning a lot. And it's fantastic classes. This is their first time doing it on Zoom, and it's really a neat program. And I hope that I learned some stuff and that will help me in the next 4 years with this job.
Awesome. Just wait until you get to do the experienced League of Minnesota Cities meetings and stuff. They are fabulous. So that's awesome that you're doing that. Member Luger.
I actually did attend the experienced version of the League of Minnesota Cities training today, and it was great. I'm looking forward to the subsequent sessions that I'll be attending over the next couple of weeks. I also attended the Park Advisory Commission meeting last night, where the Park Advisory Commission had the election of the Park Advisory Chair and Vice Chair, as well as established their 2021 meeting dates and 2021 goals and initiatives.
Great, thank you. I also attended the Park Advisory Commission as well, and I enjoyed listening to what their agenda is and what their goals and stuff are. So that's very exciting to hear that. That was really kind of all that I attended this last 2 weeks. So again, a little more quiet. I'll be taking the League of Minnesota Cities Experienced leadership classes here coming tomorrow and then into that next week. So just a couple things. I wanted to shout out Public Works and Superintendent Almgeld. I have received several, and that's probably an understatement, several kudos to his department and to him for his leadership in terms of plowing or the brining that gets put on the road, and that it's put on a couple days ahead, and people are really seeing a big difference in that leadership role in that brining. So we're very happy that he brought that to us to the city. We also had a resident who sent an email stating that there was some snow and some on the sidewalk, and when we could take care of it, and Public Works was out there within 2 hours. I think it was even less than that. So many just doing a great job, and I want him to know that. And I thank the residents who take the time to let us know if there is an issue and then letting us know when it's fixed, and then also for the kudos that they provide for the staff. So really appreciate that. And before I get to Mr. Erickson, I have something for him, so I'm putting him on notice. I just want to make sure, is the new road project on the website? I don't think I saw it on there. So I'm wondering if we can maybe put up the map of the streets that we're doing. Is that something that we could do?
It's on the website, actually, Mayor. There is a link, I guess, for our public. If we go to Public Works, and then we have street improvement projects, you'll find that 2021 street improvement project where there is the timeline and the public meetings that have been had, that first public meeting, the slideshow from the public meeting, and that map. So that is on, it's just under our wyomingmn.org, and that's /2021 street project for any of the public.
Awesome, that's great. And then we did update it a little bit more. So kudos to Jenny for getting some updates on there. So it's easier to get to our live streaming of our meetings. So I had some people check on that and they were pretty excited to be able to find it very easily. So I appreciate that. Mr. Erickson, I am hoping for an update on the Highway 8 project. And if you've got anything you'd like to clue us in on.
Yeah, I can. Let me, I'm just going to pull up a document. I have a draft prepared and I'll share that here. While I'm doing that, I'll just quick mention a couple of other items. And so we do have a few developments. I'm buying a little time while I'm pulling this up. We have a couple of developments in various stages, but two development agreements are out with developers for review currently. That one being the Hunter's Hill off of Pioneer Road, and the other being the Diamond Ridge there off of 261st Street. And so a couple of projects there. We have a concept plan for a project there off of 257th Street next to Himes Lake Villas that will be at the Planning Commission next week. And I do have some information now that I can get to your item, so that you had asked for an update.
Appreciate that.
All right, so I'm just pulling up. You're able to see my screen, I presume?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right, how about now?
Yes.
All right, so we've prepared a memo to Mr. Triplett. We reviewed the documents that he shared. We had since asked for additional information. We had some maps to look at, but we really wanted to get and dive into a little bit more of the traffic operations and the traffic counts and the volumes that were projected, and really evaluate the function of the intersections. And so we've done that. I'm just going to kind of go down. I have a couple of sections highlighted here below. We'll be setting this off once we've had a conversation with you folks. And so one of these, I guess really we wanted to understand how the intersections function. And so I think at the last meeting, I think we all came to the conclusion that we prefer the side stop control intersection rather than what we call the R-cut alternative, where vehicles wouldn't necessarily be able to just cross the intersection. They may have to take a circuitous route, if you will, to get to the direction that they want to go. And so we looked at really three main points I'd like to highlight here. And one is the options presented at Hamlet and Heath really do cause some concern for us. And again, that's the stop sign control on the side approaches. Both of those function at a level of F and E, according to the evaluation matrix provided by SRF. And so we do have a few questions that we'd like to ask of the county before we really render our opinion on that, because those really are inadequate operations that when we build a new roadway, we'd like to see them function in a better manner. When we look at the R-cuts, they actually did function much better. And so I think that really might potentially change our opinion and how and what we might recommend for an intersection type moving forward. But that alone, just those two components, we'd like to learn a little bit more. We've also commented that, you know, if this is the results, maybe we would ask them to evaluate roundabouts at those two locations. Again, we do have a signal at Pioneer. We do have a signal proposed at Greenway, but there's a couple of intersections in between, both Heath and Hamlet. And so I know that they commented they prefer not to have 2-lane roundabouts. This is a 2-lane section of roadway. And so we just wanted to learn a little bit more. I think one other recommendation that we would have is it would be useful to, and again, I'm on this section here, it'd be useful to see a model that takes into consideration the different scenarios for intersections to determine how they operate in conjunction with one another. So you can imagine that if you have signals at either side of the two intersections at Pioneer and Greenway, those might provide some gaps in traffic when they're in operation. And so we want to really look at a model that incorporates all the intersections functioning together and see if that improves the level of service at those intersections at Greenway and at Heath and Hamlet. And so that's really, we haven't really come to conclusion and indicate this is what we're recommending you move forward with, or directing this is what we want you to move forward with. We're actually asking for a little bit more information. And so I hope that's okay and the correct approach, but I think it's certainly something that we would feel more comfortable in making recommendations once we know that these potentially have the opportunity to improve. Because right now, that's not a great situation to have these operating at a level of service F and E. We tend to see more people cut through and maybe take more chances that are a little bit risky, trying to find an opening and get out onto the roadway. So I think that's our direction that we, from the staff perspective, would like to move forward with, is really to get a little bit more detail of their modeling to ensure that we look at it as a whole rather than in pieces, each intersection individually.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Mr. Erickson, and taking our comments into consideration. For someone who's on the road the majority of the day, I see a lot, and so you being able to take the lead on this and letting them know how we feel is awesome. So appreciate that. Yep, Member Yeager.
Okay, so that R-cut alternative, that's where you cross over to the left lane, scoot across, take a jug handle around and scoot back the other way?
Well, that's the technical verbiage, but yes.
Yeah, got it. And that's showing to be safer in going across traffic and doing it that way than a stop sign?
Yeah, there's certainly advantages and disadvantages to both. Obviously, those do have more impacts. It's a wider footprint, and I think that's a concern, both of ours and the counties, is that environmental impact. These are in some areas that do have wetlands, and it certainly would be more impactful in that regard as well. And so there's a balance that we're looking for, and we're not really excited to see the level of service F and E at Hamlet and Heath respectively. And so we'll provide our feedback, and I think the county will then in return provide some additional information to us and maybe evaluate a little bit further in depth on their part as well.
Right, because I'd like to see more of, my concern would be somebody getting rear-ended as they try to cross over to the left and then have to get off the road to cross the opposing lane of traffic.
Yeah, and so I guess the point, I mean, they do reduce the number of conflict points. And so I think, the R cuts do function pretty well in that regard. They're almost turn lanes, right? So they're outside of, you're crossing 2 lanes, not 4 lanes and a median, but you're crossing 2 lanes and getting into a turn lane immediately to do a U-turn essentially. And so there are reduced conflicts associated with these, but
it's a U-turn around a jug handle, or what we call the jug handle.
Yeah, so it's certainly, I think they're not, there's not a lot of comfort level from people that utilize them right now. I think they certainly will grow just like roundabouts with their use, but the turn right to go left is something that some people have a difficult time getting over.
Right. Is there an assumption that people will go from Hamlet to Heath in the back road to try to get out?
There certainly could be. There could be some people that utilize that. I know one of the plans did show a connection actually out east to Greenway, which would have a lot of environmental impacts, but they would have the option at that point to go out east to Greenway, where there is a signalized intersection.
Right. I mean, I remember seeing like frontage roads or our existing roads paved so that Hamlet and Heath and, like you say, Greenway become interconnected off of 8. And has the county looked at how people will travel along those frontage roads, and at what access point will they most likely congregate at?
Yeah, they've identified and have traffic volumes projected at each, and of course those things will change as those areas develop potentially. But yes, they have evaluated that.
Do you have the results?
Yeah, that's the results that we've identified here with the level of service that's been identified. So they have just numbers, like the number of vehicles entering each, and it's
right.
There's a lot of judgment that goes involved in a number of these, and it's based on proximity to those, but they're relatively minor in side street traffic volumes based on the density and the number of homes that we have in these areas.
Okay, so you don't anticipate like everybody from Hamlet and everybody from Heath all trying to get out at Heath, which might necessitate a different access control rather than, if they're not trying to come out at Hamlet.
Yeah, the traffic volumes are so minor on these side streets that I don't think it matters one way or another, but it wouldn't trigger a signal or something of that nature.
Okay, thanks.
All right, appreciate it. And then I'm going to end on a very positive note. City of Wyoming made a list. We made, what do I want to say? We were put on a list, or we made a list. And Mr. Linwood is going to share what that list is. So we can all do a little cheer after that.
Thanks. We did make a good list. Earlier, I should say this weekend, the Star Tribune came out with the Twin Cities hottest housing market, and within the Twin Cities metro area, and the city of Wyoming ranked 22nd in that area. And they take a lot of different statistical analysis to come up with that ranking, but a lot of it has to do at housing sales, the sale prices of homes, in regards to the inventory on the market, things like that. So we've had a lot of new listings with a lot of closed sales, and the days it took to sell houses in Wyoming have been, they've gone very quick. So on an average of 13 days. So that's a positive for our community, as we have a lot of new residential developments coming online this year. So it's good to see that housing market is moving here, and like I said, overall 22nd the metro. So that's great news.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous news. So really nice to make that list, right? So I can see everybody's really enjoying that. So I appreciate all the smiles on this. So good job. All right, with that, we need a motion to adjourn. The time right now is 8:28. So we can do it officially or shake our heads, and I'll call it an adjournment. So on the count of three, yeah, I see head shaking. Okay, on the count of three, do we want to adjourn? Shake your head, yes. All right, we're all shaking our head on that, and the time on that again is 8:28. Appreciate everybody's time, and have a safe couple of weeks.
Thank you. Have a good night.